Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time, this time to build. 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 This time power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
What's up, everybody? I'm your host, Chris Hampton. Welcome to episode 72 of the Power Company Podcast, brought to you by PowerCompanyClimbing.com. I don't have a whole lot of things to tell you guys. We've got a ton going on over here, but not a lot that you need to know about just yet. A couple of things you do need to know about, however, are... Number one, the Performance Climbing Coach Seminar dates have just been released for our first date of the year, and that's going to be April 6th through 8th in Columbia, Maryland. And if you're not familiar, I've talked about it before. That's with Steve Bechtel and Charlie Manganello of Climb Strong, Neely Quinn from Training Beta, and Tyler Nelson from Camp 4 Human Performance. We'll all be presenting and coaching. That's going to be in Columbia, Maryland, April 6th to 8th. And if you register before February 22nd, you can save $100. Visit performanceclimbingcoach.com for more info and to get registered. And there are limited spots, so you should go get your registrations now. That will fill up for sure. Also, don't forget to sign up for our newsletter. I mentioned that in the last episode. We're getting that started. That's one of Nate's big goals for the year, is to have that newsletter running. So you can do that in your show notes right there in your podcast app, or you can go to PowerCompanyClimbing.com, click on the banner at the top of the page. While you're there, buy some shit. Why not? Support the podcast. So sign up for that newsletter. Also, Nate's going to be in Waco end of this month all the way through February, and he's available for private sessions while he's in Waco. So if you're interested in getting out with Nate for a couple of days, having him look at your movement, your tactics, and talk to you about those things, hit me up through the website. Go to the website, PowerCompanyClimbing.com, click on that contact button, and shoot me a message. I want to jump into this thing kind of quick today. This was one of the early conversations that I just sort of jumped into without really knowing much about the person I was talking to. And I had seen her name on the internet. I had seen her out at the boulders once or twice, and just felt like she would be a really great person to talk to. And we recorded a year ago, so last December, December 2016, I guess that was. So it's been a little bit, and since then I've gotten to climb with her a little more, and I think this conversation really rings true of some things that she's been working through herself. And the she that I keep referring to is Marina Inoue. She is a tattoo artist, 5'2", ridiculously strong and ridiculously positive climber that I feel pretty lucky to have been able to climb around. And if you've gotten to climb around her as well, you know what I mean. And something she wrote the summer after we talked on her Facebook, I think really sums this up and is how I would like to get started with this conversation. Marina wrote, "This past year has been the turning point in my climbing, where 99% of the time, I just can't accept my diminutive height as an excuse for failure anymore."
Maybe don't know.
This time, this time, this time, this time.
You're like 99% of the time, you're not too short to do a move. You're just not strong enough. And you can't get taller, but you can always get stronger.
This time, power. This time to build power. This time to build power. This time to build power.
So how long have you been on the road in this rig?
Since September, so not that long. We bought it in the beginning of the summer, but we've only been in it since September.
What's the how's climbing changed for you since you've been on the road permanently?
This is the second time I've been on the road for a long period of time. This time it's a little different because the last time I was on the road by myself, but now I'm traveling with my boyfriend, Nick. So that definitely changes the dynamic in a good way. I mean, you always have a climbing partner. It's way less lonely.
Yeah, no doubt.
Yeah.
How long were you on the road by yourself?
Like about 6 months.
I think that's a pretty cool undertaking. How old were you?
28. Yeah.
That's pretty badass.
It was awesome.
Where did you go?
I went to Waco Tanks first. I bounced back between, my boyfriend Nick was living in Colorado, so I bounced back between Colorado for like a week or so, and then went to Waco, and then went back to Colorado, went to Vegas, back to Colorado, went to the New. And then,
oh, wow. Jumped way over.
Yeah, way over. I went to the New for the spring for a month and some change.
So cool. There's so many things just about this that I want to ask you. So when you first went out onto the road, was there like were people around you afraid for you or anything like that? So I hear that especially from girls sometimes, that their parents are like, you can't go out on the road by yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it was that by the time I decided to do it, I was 28. It's like kind of old, you know?
Yeah.
I mean, relatively speaking to,
So
you know, it's not like I was just out of high school.
Right.
You know, I was an adult.
Yeah, you were
with a job, you know,
point.
And so my parents were definitely kind of nervous about it, but they're pretty bohemian, you know, and pretty understanding, and they're not conventional or conservative at all, so they were supportive. I think my mom was a little nervous, you know, and kind of didn't quite understand what I was trying to do, but they were mostly pretty supportive about it.
Yeah. And the New, why the New? Because that's like, if there was one place that I would tell a small climber to not go,
It'd be the New.
it would be the New.
It's the reachiest. It's the best rock climbing in America.
It's so good.
It's so good. It's really good. Well, when I first started climbing, I lived in Richmond, Virginia. So the New was like the local crag, being 4.5 hours away. It was the closest.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I learned how to sport climb. And it's just the best, you know. I mean, the West is great, and being able to travel everywhere, climb a bunch of different places is awesome, but the New is always going to be my number one favorite place.
Yeah, and if you can live there and cherry pick the good days, it's a really, really amazing place. If you travel there, you might get rained out a lot.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, it's like anywhere in the Southeast, you know, as we're currently experiencing.
Yep.
It can be wet, but the New is reachy. It can be hard for sure, but it's the best rock. It's the best climbing. I think it's my favorite place.
So let's just start there. There's a few things I want to talk to you about.
Sure.
But let's just start there, because since the New's known to be reachy, and you're a small climber, how tall are you?
I'm 5'2" and some change.
Yeah. Wingspan?
Negative.
Yeah.
I have
guessed
short
that.
arms. Yeah, pretty short.
So are there tricks you employ, like either physical or mental, things that you've just kind of taken to heart and things that you carry with you when you go climbing?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as a short person, if you're going to be ruled by your height, you're going to have a bad time climbing.
Yeah, totally.
And it's not to say that I haven't had moments where I've seen somebody do something in a way that's so easy for them that is so hard for me because I'm short, and not had
For sure.
like a moment of internal combustion. You know? Like, oh my God, this is such a different rock climb for me.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think especially this year, this fall specifically, being there for the longest that I've ever been there, one, I learned to look at reachy, like notoriously reachy routes as a challenge. Like, oh, like tall people don't have a problem with it, but how cool would it be to do it as a short person, you know, to kind of like break that mold, break that, like, you know, stereotype where people always say, I've never been on it. You can't do it because you're short. That's like not really I don't know. It's nice to approach that as a challenge rather as like something to stay away from, kind of.
No, I think that's a really good idea. I think ultimately that's the place every climber should be, about things that they think don't fit them.
Sure.
You know, it's tough. I hear so many short folks, guys or girls, using it's just too big a reach for me.
Right.
Immediately.
Yeah.
You know, they'll try it one time and then go straight to that.
Yeah.
So, and the reason I wanted to talk about it is not just because I saw you and you're little, you know,
So stretched out.
Well, we climbed together a little specifically on the Golden Harvest boulder on Golden Shower, and you and my fiance were both trying it. And I was really surprised to see you stick the move, because it's a giant move.
I was surprised too.
Yeah, and I thought it was really amazing that you just went in and went at it. And I didn't hear a single time you say something like, "Oh, that move's so much easier for you."
Right.
Talking to someone taller, or, you know, any of the guys that were working on the problem at the time.
Yeah.
And I know that you've climbed harder boulders than that.
Yeah.
So I think it's really cool to approach something at a lower grade, still go hard on it, and not just say, "I'm just going to ignore that one because it's a Reach EV5 and I've climbed way harder than that."
Yeah. I think something that's really helped me is my boyfriend, Nick, is huge.
Yeah.
He's 6'1" and has a +4 ape index, you know?
Yep.
And him being such a different height and climbing with him so much has, if I approached everything by watching him climb it and how much easier it is for him, or just like approached it by thinking how much easier it is for him because he's tall, like I said, I'd have a bad time climbing and be frustrated all the time, you know. And he has helped me a lot with my attitude, I think. And just as I've climbed more and more and gotten stronger, I've realized that it's like, you're like 99% of the time, you're not too short to do a move. You're just not strong enough.
Sure.
And you can't get taller, but you can always get stronger.
Right.
And that
you're not doing it correctly.
Right.
Or you're not applying enough power or something.
Yeah. You're just not trying hard enough. You haven't quite figured out the right beta, you know. And that was something that I really realized this fall specifically. I mean, I've definitely had times and attitudes where I'm like, I'm too short to do this move. Like, it's so easy for everybody else, and I'm so short, and I can't reach it, and my arms are short, and yada yada.
Yeah.
And I had a hard time this fall for sure being at the new. You know, I went through a whole series of like anxieties and like mental fatigue and feeling like I was weak and feeling like I was short, and I got called out on my attitude. And I really like started approaching it differently.
Did Nick call you out, or did someone else? Okay.
Yeah, he definitely called me out. He was like, "God, you're terrible to be around. Like, your attitude's so bad." And, you know, it was the first time that I'd really ever experienced in my climbing career this fall, like being shut down, like really being shut down by routes that I'd picked to project. But anyways, to backtrack a little bit. So I tried the Golden Shower boulder, which is V5. It's like half as hard as other boulders that I've climbed, you know? And last year, tried it a little bit, just kind of messing around. Couldn't really stick that move and was like, you know, whatever. We only went to Rocktown one day. I felt like I was too short to make the span, you know? Like I was like slapping at it, couldn't grab it. That like one big move. And then this year, I'm obviously a little stronger than I was last year.
Yeah, and you're not any taller.
And I'm not any taller, you know, and I'm older, you know.
You might even be getting shorter.
I might even be
getting
shorter. I know at this point. So shrinking right away. But, you know, it's like that move was not really that hard for me this year. And I did the boulder. And that happened with a lot of routes at the new this year as well. I didn't climb routes of the same grade as I did the last time I was there. So I didn't, you know, climb any 513s this year.
Right.
But there's a difference between achievement and fulfillment, if that makes sense.
For sure.
Which I had to like, was a little bit of a hard lesson to learn. And this sounds bratty, but I've been used to like picking projects and doing them. And
Sure.
picking projects and doing them. And I've never, like, really experienced a full season where I haven't picked a project and just sent it, you know, after trying it for a while at least. But this year I got shut down, and it's because I was trying roots that were really hard for me. Were Doug Reed roots, you know?
Yeah.
Like amazing,
that have
beautiful.
reaches the length of your body.
Yeah, huge, you know. But I also found that roots that I couldn't do the last time I was there that were like in the mid 512 range that felt impossible, too reachy, too long, were now totally doable. And I did all those roots.
Yeah,
like
that's
lock-offs.
awesome.
Yeah, you know, like lock-offs I couldn't do where I was like, oh, this feels insane. Were no problem this time. So it's like, I just really learned that lesson this season.
Yeah,
for sure.
Do you attribute all of that to the attitude, or and a little to getting just generally stronger?
I think it's both, you know.
Yeah.
Like I experienced a lot of disappointment in a way that in myself that I haven't really experienced before. I think because I was picking roots that were really hard for me.
Yeah,
you know,
that's a tough thing to do, especially when you're used to sending things.
Yeah,
and,
for sure.
you know, I went through a similar thing in the red this season.
Yeah,
I've climbed in the red, you know, my whole climbing career, so I didn't want to go there and just do the endurance-y stuff. So instead, I kind of made my last hurrah in the red a season of getting on the things that I had avoided or I had tried and deemed impossible for my height or whatever.
Totally.
And it was super fun to learn to get better at jumping and to get better at super bouldery starts and things that just aren't my style.
Yeah, for sure.
So, and I didn't climb anything even close to my hardest grade.
Yeah.
But I climbed some things that I had called impossible before.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
And that feels really good.
Yeah, it's super cool.
You know, it feels really good to do that. And it's important to strip ego sometimes, you know, like everybody likes to talk about how grades don't matter, but we all know that, you know, like,
they absolutely do.
Yeah,
I mean,
of course, it's how you mark your progression.
Yeah, unless you're some kind of Buddha, I don't think you can ignore them entirely.
Totally.
You know, you don't have to let them rule what you do, but
totally.
But they're going to make a difference.
Yeah, it does make a difference sometimes, but when you are able to like try something that's just hard for you regardless of the grade and feel as proud of doing that as you do of doing something that has higher points, you know, it's important.
No, that's huge.
It feels good.
So before I definitely want to move into kind of talking about the ego behind it and all that, but are there physical techniques, things that you go to often because you're short?
Yeah, I think most short people would agree that high foot lock off is like, maybe that's just the new, I don't know.
No, I think, well, here's why I ask, because I think there are lots of short guys and girls that want to climb harder, but go to that I'm too short excuse pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And I think if there are things that they can say, okay, this is what some of the strong short folks use, these are the techniques they got good at because they're short, then maybe they can work on those things a little bit and use those to gain some hope.
Yeah,
you know?
for sure. I mean, I think I bust out all the tricks all the time, you know, especially...
Talk to me about all the tricks.
The new definitely taught me how to do high foot lock off, like how to lock off so hard that you're mantling. You're not pulling anymore, you're pushing.
With your foot like at the level of your head.
Right,
or
exactly.
The same level as your hands.
Yeah, and your like hand is like locked off below your waist, you know?
Yep.
So turning like a lock off into a mantle. And that's something that I learned this fall specifically. I mean, heel hooks, toe hooks, knee bars, like as much as you can, any finagling that I can do, I try to really do, you know. It's helped me a lot. And climbing in Waco has helped me a lot with that for sure. Waco and the New are like the two most opposite styles of climbing, I feel like, and they've been the two most beneficial places I've ever ever climbed.
Cool.
I suck at jumping, but I try. I've been trying to get better at it.
Well, I
'cause
think
it's
when
really
you're
important.
5'2" with a negative ape index, you can only jump so far.
That's true.
Even
but
if you're great at jumping, it's still only so far.
It's true. Yeah, but it
so it would
helps.
be easy to go to, I suck at jumping, even if you're pretty good at it.
Yeah. I still try, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
It's hard for me. I don't even know if it's like, I mean, I'll never be able to do a V10 dyno, you know?
Right,
That's
right.
totally fine. I'm good with
I'll
that.
probably never be able to do a V10
You know what I
dyno.
mean? It's
Yeah.
hard. But, yeah, it's crazy. But I think, like, dead pointing is a really good skill to have,
Mm-hmm.
like, as a smaller person, because some people can just lock off or, like, just reach the holds. And when you're little, you just have to be able to be comfortable with, like, doing a dynamic move to a bad hold or from a bad hold.
Yep. And I think it's important to, like, be able to get your body into this tiny little box,
Yes.
like super high feet, and learn how to explode out of that.
Definitely.
Because that's a tough position to create momentum out of when
Yeah.
you've got super high feet. But I think it's
For
a
sure.
valuable skill for shorties to have.
It's so helpful. I try to work on that.
Yeah,
Definitely.
It's just a practice thing, really.
Yeah. Plus, jumping is fun. It is.
Totally.
It's super fun.
Yeah. So ego-wise, I find it pretty interesting that Nick called you out for having a bad attitude because
I had a bad attitude at first.
because what I saw the first time we met last week
Mm-hmm.
was the best attitude I've ever seen from a female, strong boulder walking up to another group.
Thanks. That
I
makes
thought
me
it was
feel good.
I thought it was really cool how inclusive you were and how little ego there seemed to be.
Yeah.
And I mean, you just jumped right in. You were stoked for everybody else. And I know this is a common thing to say, like, oh, they're so stoked for everyone else. But it seemed so genuine,
Mm-hmm.
even though you could see that when you get on the wall, you're very fierce about what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
Like, you're not backing down to make anyone else feel better, nothing like that. But then as soon as you're off the wall, you're helping push everyone else.
Sure.
And I didn't see the bad attitude. So I think that you must have made like total 180 turnaround outwardly anyway.
Okay, so my bad attitude that I was having at the new wasn't outward to everyone else.
Okay. Just to yourself.
Just to myself. And, you know, he's my partner, like, in life and in climbing. So I feel like your partners always bear the brunt of your, you know, whatever you have going on in your brain. Because, you, like, feel like you can expose yourself to them, right? So when I got to the new, I'd taken 6 weeks off of climbing, no climbing at all. It was hot. I was out of shape. The climbing there's hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I had these expectations for myself and for how I was going to feel. And expectations versus reality was not the same.
Right, right.
So I was really frustrated. I was really frustrated with myself because I know how my body normally feels and has felt in the past when I feel good, when I feel fit, when I'm psyched. And I didn't feel that way. And that was like the first time that I'd really ever experienced trying to get back into shape outside without a gym and being that out of shape, period. I know 6 weeks doesn't seem like that long of a time, but I haven't been climbing for very long, so...
Mm-hmm. And if it gets in your head, then it's just compounded.
Oh, dude, it was crazy. I mean, I was so frustrated all the time with myself, and I definitely let it affect, like, my attitude at the crag. Not so much to, like... not to everybody else, but it was all about I was so wrapped up in myself and my own head and my, like, disappointment in how I felt and how I was performing, like, just totally frustrated.
Yeah.
And that was what my bad attitude was, you know, just, like, cranky and irritated and, like, mad at myself for feeling weak, you know? So that was what he'd call me out on. He was like, you're so down on yourself. You always say you can't do something. You're not trying hard at all. You just give up. Like, you're unpleasant to be around. You need to get it together, you know, which was something that I really needed to hear at the time and really tried to, like, I mean, it's important to be called out on your
Totally.
bullshit,
It absolutely is. And good job to Nick for doing it. 'Cause that's a tough thing to do.
I know. It was really important for me to hear that. I really needed it for sure. And of course, like, as the season went on, I felt better and better. And I mean, beyond that, I had such a good time there with everybody I was climbing with. And it was an amazing season.
And I think that's hugely important that you can, even if you're failing on some of the things that you think you should be doing.
Yeah.
If you can still have a good time and enjoy the people.
Yeah, it was the best.
I think ultimately it just propels you forward. It's,
Definitely.
The numbers don't matter as much as whether you're enjoying it, having a good time doing it.
Yeah. I mean, it was, as far as like sending stuff goes, I didn't red point my hardest routes,
Right.
But it was one of the most fun seasons I've ever had, including the time when I was frustrated and cranky and in a bad mood.
And it's a big learning experience.
Huge.
To go through that.
Huge. It was really important. But I mean, as far as like being at the boulders goes, I'm psyched for everybody all the time. Like, I want to see people succeed,
Well, it seemed to me that you were stoked for yourself, even when, okay, let me paint the picture here. You had stuck the giant sideways move.
Yeah.
And then you climb up to the top out.
And then I punted.
And you punted on the top out.
It was so funny.
But you were laughing. And
it was funny.
It was funny. And everyone else was like, uh-oh. And then everyone else thought it was funny because you thought it was funny.
It was funny.
So you weren't being super hard on yourself in that situation. Or at least it didn't look like it. Was there some of that in there? Or was it just total fun to you? Like,
no,
oh, well, I can do it.
Definitely not. I mean, punting... Bouldering is funny. It's like a funny, to me, I love it. I love it so much.
I'm so glad you said that.
It's super funny, like,
yeah.
Like you're just like wrestling around on these little pebbles and it's like you can just walk down the back or walk up the back or whatever. And it seems kind of hilarious. So throwing a serious it takes a lot for me to throw a serious wobbler. I don't think I've ever had a wobbler that's like actually affected the rest of my day, Bouldering. Maybe a little more sport climbing because there's so many more moves. But no, I mean, I try to have a good attitude. It's so fun. Bouldering's so fun. And when I'm climbing around people, it doesn't like matter how strong they are or how whatever level of climbing they're at. Like, I want people to have fun. I like having fun, you know? Bouldering's such a good time.
No doubt.
And I think it's important to like have a good vibe, So are there situations where you've walked up and been either intimidated or that like situations that you recognize you're not in the best headspace? And we don't have to name names or anything like by
that.
People, you mean? But like intimidated by people?
Yeah, definitely not like just the size of a boulder or a route or something like that. But
I mean, there's always situations where there's like 40 people at a boulder and everybody's trying, and it can be a lot,
Yeah.
It's the same in sport climbing. Like when there's a ton of people around, it can definitely be stressful. But I think if there's a good dynamic going and people have a good attitude about the amount of people that are there, you can feed off of other people's energy. People get psyched and then other people get psyched, and then it's just, that's like why there's send trains. Somebody does it and somebody else is like, I want to do it, and then they do it.
Right.
There's a huge, I think, like mental dynamic that happens when people have a good attitude, and when there's a sour apple at the crag or a sour apple at a boulder, it's pretty weird and can be awkward, and it's just not.
So are you aware that you are bringing that dynamic, like the good dynamic, to the group?
No, but I like hearing that. That makes me feel good.
No, I think it's, Annalisa and I talked about it after we walked away, after we left Golden Shower that first day. And then we talked about it again after Lab Rats.
Yeah.
Because both boulders had these giant moves, and there were other people climbing on the same boulder. And, it's funny, Annalisa and I go through this where I don't have any trouble with her projects, and watching Nick versus you on Lab Rats, where the moves look fairly small to him.
Yeah.
And when you're on it, they look enormous.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's funny to see that situation. But in both cases, I felt like you showed up and there was a different dynamic, like a different, more exciting, go for it dynamic that just happened. And it didn't just happen. It was you bringing that. So I'm curious if you know you're bringing that.
I mean, definitely not. I don't think so. I don't
No?
think that's anything I've ever really considered
Okay.
particularly. But I really love climbing, and I think bouldering's really fun. And I haven't done it in a while. And the bouldering here is so good. And everybody that I'm with, like, I like climbing with, and I like meeting new people. And I'm just always, like, really excited to try a new boulder or whatever, try a project. Like, I just get super psyched.
Yeah.
I know that sounds cheesy maybe, but
No, I don't think it's cheesy at all. I think it could be if it seemed not genuine.
Yeah.
You know? I hear some people say it and then they just go grumble
yeah.
when they're at the boulders and there's a crowd or whatever. But like I said before, I didn't see that in your case. So
Yeah.
I think that's
Cool.
a real
Cool,
thing.
yeah.
Like, you're out there having a great time, trying super hard. So like when I saw you fall off the top of Golden Shower, my first thought was she was trying hard.
Mhm.
And this is a good example of someone just not doing it, but knowing they can do it and not letting that upset them.
Yeah. I don't
And
think
I-
it's anything to be upset by.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I think I do see lots of climbers, especially women, and I know I'm totally generalizing here, but a lot of women take it as a more emotional thing than men do,
Yeah.
and I see a lot of women get really upset when they fall on something they don't think they should have fallen on.
Yeah. I mean, by the same token, I see a lot of guys get upset.
Oh
too.
yeah, they throw fits for sure.
Big old fits. I
Yeah.
think that women are probably more prone to actual crag tears. I've never seen a guy cry at the crag.
They
but
just
I've,
become babies.
yes,
Yeah,
like fits of baby rage. And
baby rage.
Baby, you know what I mean?
Totally
Like,
gonna use that.
yeah. It's kind of embarrassing to have a bad attitude climbing, I think. And that's why when Nick called me out, I was like, oh no, and like made a huge effort to like really correct it, because nobody wants to be that guy or that girl.
Yeah.
You know. And it's good to take it all in stride. And also, what's the worst thing? You have to try it again, you know? Like, if you fail, you try again, and you're just getting stronger by trying it again. Like, the more moves you do,
Totally.
the stronger you get, right? That's like a basic understanding of physical fitness. Like, the more you try, the more muscle you're going to end up building.
Sure.
You know, the stronger you're going to get, like, mentally and physically.
Yep.
So it's like, I never have had a problem having to try something again in project. You know?
Are there routes or boulders that have brought you to tears?
No, I have not cried on a rock climb in my climbing career, thankfully. I have had personal non-rock climbing related issues at the crag before,
Gotcha.
but not
Yep.
related to
Not
the
related
act.
to the climb.
No.
Yep.
You know, like you get into a fight or whatever, and it's the wrong time, the wrong place for sure. But
Okay.
no, I've actually never really cried rock climbing before.
Yeah, I think that, again, right back to your attitude. I think it's just a healthy way to approach climbing, and
Yeah.
I was stoked to see it happen.
Yeah.
I knew your name before you walked up. Thanks, social media. Yeah. And I'm sure I was a little creepy, like, you're Marina.
No, not at all. I knew you were. I knew that you worked with like Nate Drille and stuff. So
Yeah, and I just thought it was cool to see that happen.
Yeah.
Do you prefer to climb with guys or with girls?
I don't think that I've ever really had a particular preference. It is awesome to climb with women, mostly because just size. You can share beta and like feed off of each other, and it's fun to hang out with your girlfriends climbing. And I was really lucky this fall at the New to climb exclusively with women, like a bunch of really
there's
cool.
a cool group of girls there.
Oh my God. Fayetteville has the best crew of girls, and they were all so inspiring and so encouraging, and there was very little cattiness or competitiveness between the girls there, and it was great. And I've actually never experienced having that many women climbing partners, and it was awesome. It was super
There's some
inspiring.
good trash talk with the women in Fayetteville too.
Oh, yeah.
Not cattiness, just trash talk.
Trash talk.
Yeah.
A lot of it. It's good.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Yeah, shout out Jessa and Lydia and
The best.
the whole crew.
Yeah, exactly. It was so fun. Yeah, climbing with them was amazing. But I like climbing with whoever, just friends.
Yeah. So when you are climbing with guys, is there I mean, what's that like in your head when it's just you and a bunch of dudes, which I'm sure you get into that situation quite a bit when you're climbing on harder boulders or harder routes.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Nick is like my primary climbing partner,
Yep.
but
Nick's strong. So
yeah, he's way strong.
yeah, so you guys
really
are,
strong.
at problems or at routes that are hard, and I know occasionally there are women there, and not that women are lesser climbers. There are just fewer women out there climbing hard routes than there are men.
Yeah, it's true. Luckily, I've and I lived in Colorado for a little while, and there's a lot of strong women out there.
Yeah, no doubt.
There's a lot. And the first season when I went to Waco a couple years ago, there weren't that many girls around. There's a lot less women. So I was climbing with mostly dudes, but it was fun. I mean, I feel like everybody's just psyched to go bouldering, and you kind of, it's like, that's a thing that I never really contemplate or notice is like the dynamic of women to men, ratio, really. I just never really ever really considered it. Everybody's kind of always been stronger than me that I've climbed with. So it's not.
It's kind of a good place to be.
Yeah, it's sweet. It's super inspiring.
Yeah, and it's such a cool place to be able to learn things,
So many things.
If you get caught being the big fish in your own little bowl,
Yeah.
you're not going to go very far.
No, it's always inspiring to climb with people who are stronger than you, But that's also what's cool. What was cool about Waco is that there was a whole range of abilities, that would all go climbing together. So there'd be people who climb, double digits, and there'd be people who climb like V3.
Yeah.
And everybody would go climbing together, and nobody had an ego really, about it. Yeah, I don't know. Climbing with girls is cool though, because you can really share beta. Like short person beta is a real thing, so it's super helpful.
And I think that's important. And sharing beta is another thing. I thought, and I am showering you with compliments or something, but it was something else I thought was really cool. And I'm an observer. It's what I do when I'm at the crag or at the boulders or whatever.
Sure.
And watching you on Golden Shower, sharing your beta with other people, and then watching you on Lab Rats when another girl there your size had done the move, and as soon as she did it, you were immediately like, how did you do that? Show me how you did that.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't like, oh, she did the move, I'm going to walk away now. It was, man, let's share this beta. How the hell did you do that?
Yeah, totally.
And it was really cool to watch, because I think guys in particular tend to kind of posture and, especially like in the V5 range. I think that, sorry guys, but it's true. There's a lot of posturing and a lot of like flexing. And if another guy does the move that everyone's trying, the guys will often find a reason not to try the boulder again.
Is that true? That's
It's totally
weird.
true. I see it all the time.
I don't know.
Not every day, but I do see it pretty often.
Yeah, that's bizarre.
And I thought it was cool that you were immediately like, show me how you did that.
I was impressed. She's super strong, and we were the same size. And if I see somebody that's my height, like doing a move that I can't do, I'm impressed and want to know like what they did to see if that's something that could be feasible for me, you know? And I think it's cool to share beta. Like,
I do too.
I try not to spray at people or whatever. Nobody likes like a beta spray load, but
right. Yeah, there was a guy sitting on top of Bumboy the other week at Horsepins, telling everyone where to put their fingers.
Yeah, it's like
grab it here. No, grab it right here.
I don't know if you've ever climbed a rifle, but it's crazy.
Only
there.
a few days.
Yeah, it's intense. It can be intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like part of the community, you know, just being able to share beta, and it's cool to share it with strong women. And I'm always impressed when I see a girl that's small just crushing stuff. It's inspiring.
Yeah, Katie's super strong. So
she's so strong. It was
cool
really
to watch the two of you climb together.
Yeah, I really enjoyed climbing with her. Like, I found her really inspiring. It was sweet.
Cool.
Yeah.
So you're a tattoo artist.
Yes.
Are you still working currently while you're on the road?
I am. I'm climbing a little more than I'm working. So when I was at the New, I worked in Richmond at the shop that I worked at when I lived there a bunch. Every couple weeks would go back. And when we're in Waco, I'm going to be doing the Austin convention. And then I'll go to Utah for a few days and work at Cathedral Tattoo, which is a shop I've worked at a bunch. And
cool.
Yeah, just kind of like going to shops that are kind of in this general vicinity of where I'm going to be climbing.
So is that like a thing in the tattoo world to be able to bounce from shop to shop? And I mean, is that common for other tattooists?
It can be. Doing guest spots is pretty common. Most people have a home base, a shop that they work at all the time, and then they'll travel for work as well, and do guest spots in other places. It's not super common for people to be full-time on the road without a home-based shop, but it definitely happens. It's one of those careers where if you've been lucky enough to make a full career out of it, you get to travel as much as you want, pretty much, you know?
Yeah, I think I never would have guessed that.
Yeah.
You know, I would just assume you would have to have a shop that you were set up in, and that's where you stayed.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think, more lucrative if that's the case. You know, you build up a home-based clientele and you stay really busy at your shop. Once, you know, the longer you've been somewhere, the busier you are, pretty much.
Yeah.
But you can definitely, if you can work it, it's possible to work it out to be on the road pretty much full-time.
Yeah. And I think it's interesting to see how, you know, climbers make this road lifestyle work.
It is.
Know, with their careers. I'm just entering this, you know, be able to work from wherever life. So
I'm always
seeing
really
other
curious.
careers do it is cool.
Yeah, I'm always really curious too to see what people do to sustain this kind of lifestyle. I'm really, really, really lucky. So lucky with my job and the freedoms that it affords me, you know. But I mean, that being said, I worked from when I was 18 till I was 28 a lot. You know, I worked a lot. I worked really, really hard to be able to get to where I am. It took me a long time, a really long time.
Yeah. Okay. And there are a bunch of Christmas carolers walking by, which
I
is
know, it's
crazy.
crazy.
I haven't seen Christmas carolers since I was a kid.
I don't think I've ever seen them. It's pretty funny.
They don't have Christmas carolers all over New York?
No, they don't.
So before we wrap up,
Yes.
I was curious if you had any Waco goals. Like, do you set goals, or do you just go climb and make little projects? Or you don't have to put them out in the open. I'm just curious if there are goals there.
Well, the first year I went, I had no goals and had a really great season. It was really exciting. And then the second year I went, I had a goal, a boulder that I really wanted to do that I'd seen every day walking up the chains. And then I did it really fast, and I was really sad about it. Yeah.
Sad why?
I just had anticipated having a relationship with this boulder and having it be this project. And then it wasn't, and I was psyched to have done the boulder because it's one of the best boulder problems I've ever climbed for sure, but just had all these like doubts and questions and like wondering, and just I thought that it was going to be something way more involved than it was, and it was weird for me. So this year, I don't know. I mean, I made a list of boulders that I'm psyched to try, and I'm just going to try them, I guess. Yeah.
Cool. I like that you called it a relationship.
Projects can become that sometimes.
Yeah. And you look for that? Like when
Sometimes
you're
I do.
thinking of a goal, do you go out and look for something you want to get into a relationship with?
I think a lot of the time I do. I like trying things that are hard, I like trying things that seem so hard that they might not be feasible, And I like learning everything about a boulder or a route and knowing every little bit of microbeta and having that flow, knowing something so well where you don't have to think about it anymore and think about what you're doing, and it's just like a pure physical performance. It's really cool, and I really enjoy that. So yeah, I think I like picking projects that I'm hoping to have that kind of.
Yeah, I really like that intimacy as well.
It's amazing.
And, I came up kind of as an on-siter, and I really love it still.
Yeah.
And I really value my hardest on-sites, but there's something about that getting intimate with, all the little micro betas of a project that I think the people who are like, I don't ever try a route more than 3 times.
No way.
I think they're totally missing out.
I think they are too. It's amazing to learn something and know something so well, and you have all this emotional investment in it, Of course, there's a fine line.
Totally.
Between driving yourself crazy with something, but
it can definitely make you insane.
For sure, but it's amazing to have that and love a rock climb so much that you have that with it. And those are my favorite rock climbs that I've done, the ones that have been the most struggle.
Yeah. And what I think is super interesting, and I hadn't really thought of this until just now, but routes that I've become super intimate with compared to boulders that I've done the same on, and I've only done it a couple of times with boulders because I'm still fairly new to trying hard bouldering, but I think I get dialed in even more to the boulder, and maybe that means I'm not picking hard enough routes. Maybe I can do them faster than it, or maybe I'm not delving into the intricacies of the route enough. I don't know, but when I look at the boulders, there's so much more little positioning microbeta involved than on a route that I've become intimate with.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think that's because boulders are the most condensed form of climbing, right?
Yep.
So on a route, there's always some fluff,
Yep.
Or whatever. I mean, they can be cool sections that are going to be easier than the crux,
Yep.
And the crux of a route is usually a boulder problem, you know? So if you take that out, it's the most condensed try hard you'll have, and I think there's a lack of flow on a boulder that routes really have,
Yep.
And I love route climbing. It's amazing, and it's cool to really be in that constant movement for 80, 100 feet or whatever, and clipping chains is so cool, and getting through the crux is so cool, and that relief that you have. But boulder problems are short and hard, and that's the hardest you're ever going to be trying physically is on a boulder problem, not on a route,
No doubt. And that's hard to learn.
Yeah, it is. It helps, I think, learning how to project boulders helps, I think, with learning how to project routes big time.
I agree, totally.
It helped me a lot.
Yeah. I think it can be more frustrating on a boulder almost.
It seems sillier.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I was just in the shower today, I was thinking about Golden Harvest because it's so much fun to climb on, but it's so frustrating to just fall off the third move of a boulder.
Yeah.
And I kept going back and forth in my head. Is it fun? Is it frustrating? I'm not really sure. And I'm just going to have to go with frustrating
Yes.
That's the best thing I can come up with.
Definitely.
Because, it's infuriating when you can't find the little subtle tweaks that make something work.
Yeah.
And I feel like I find those much faster on a route.
Yeah, definitely.
But it's so much fun to keep trying those little tweaks.
It's really fun. And I think that it helps you really understand your body, because bouldering, because it's so condensed and because it's your maximum effort that you're using, you really learn like subtle body positions and like where you're strong and where you're weak. Whereas on a route, I feel like you're never, like the boulder problem's never going to be 100% of your maximum effort. It's going to be like 70 or something, because there's all the endurance that's involved in all the climbing before and all the climbing after a lot of the time. So projecting on boulders, well, it seems ridiculous. You're blowing off of a hold like 3 inches off the ground, and you like fall and you're
spectacular 3-inch falls.
Yeah, it's so silly, it can seem really silly and really ridiculous and you're only ever doing 3 moves at a time, but I think there's a lot to be learned from it as far as applying it to route climbing. Yeah. Definitely.
And speaking of knowing your body well, because you and Nick are such, disparate sizes, can Nick give you beta? Because he obviously understands climbing. He understands movement pretty well. I'm just curious if he can give you beta.
We almost never do moves the same. There's actually one route in rifle that we did the same.
Well, even if you're not doing it the same way, is it possible for him to say, oh, did you try this? This might work.
Yeah, definitely. He coached for a long time. Okay. He coached a team in Richmond for Peak Experiences. And so I think coaching kids is you learn a lot, of how to understand body movement, especially for people that are smaller, because I'm pretty much child-sized, not that far off. So
that's what we're going to call this podcast.
Child-sized. Yeah. Yeah, he definitely has a lot of, he can give me a lot of insight,
Yeah, and I think people who understand movement can do that somewhat, but
definitely.
I see a lot of taller people trying to give beta when something's not working for someone shorter, and I've actually seen a good friend of mine who's also a good friend of yours was getting sprayed beta by a much taller guy. And
I can imagine.
Finally, she just turned around and said, "You cannot give me beta." And that's the experience that's in my head right now. But I see it happen so often. I was just curious if you can even accept beta from elsewhere.
I feel like I'll try anything once, as far as that goes. And sometimes somebody, regardless of size, can see something that might help, like a hip turn, a back step, like a lack of power, a lack of push, a hold that might be an intermediate that I just haven't noticed. But I also sometimes tell people, just be like, well, just do it like this. And it's like, I can't do it that way. We're not the same size.
Yep, totally.
Yeah.
Okay, well, cool. I think that's about all I need.
Cool.
So I appreciate you sitting down with me and driving all the way over here and eating chocolate with us.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me and for the tea. It's been really nice.
No problem. All right, I'll see you out at the boulders.
Cool, yeah, see ya.
Thanks, Marina.
Thanks.
Like I mentioned, I had the privilege of climbing with Marina quite a bit after this conversation in Waco. And one of my best days climbing there actually was in the little hole where Choir Boys is with Marina and Nate and Annalisa and the whole girl crew that Marina was kind of the head gangster of. And we back-to-back sent Choir Boys low, which is it's got some gigantic moves, and Marina just housed it because that's what Marina does. And she's just super, super positive, super fun to be around. Doesn't throw the little wobblers because she's too short. Doesn't make the excuse. I never once heard it. And, just to back that up, I would like to, the thing that I read earlier was from this past summer. And then just recently, in November, actually, she followed up that post on Facebook with another post a little more in depth. And I wanted to read that as well. She says, "At the New, in all of its featureless, blank, striking glory, routes established by very tall men like Doug Reed are notorious for being exponentially harder, if not impossible, for people like me. But what I continue to learn every season here is that 99 out of 100 times they are not. You just have to be willing to break the beta. You have to be willing to lock off so hard you're mantling, to grab a weirder, worse hold, to stretch your hips religiously to get the high foot, and then sit on that foot so you can reach as far as you need. You have to be willing to accept that if you can't do it, you are too weak. But maybe next year you won't be. Of course, there are exceptions. I'm sure there are really moves out there that are so heinously far away with zero options for inventive beta that would require V10 effort on a 5'11" if you're under 5'6". But I digress. Last year, I felt I was too short to do dial 911. I felt like I had no business being on it after having spent a bunch of days failing to ever even execute the moves at the top off the hang. But when it comes down to it, dial was no harder for me than it is for someone who's taller. It took me longer to figure it out, perhaps, because my way was unconventional. No one had a suggestion for me as to how to do that lock-off move, because no one I knew had ever done it in any other way. But my shitty foot beta went, and I did a route that was a total pipe dream 365 days ago. I didn't get taller. I got stronger, more fit. I got more inventive and more determined. In conclusion, being short is a poor excuse for failure, at least for me." Thanks for that, Marina. I think all of us. I mean, I'm not short. Maybe I am. I don't know. But regardless, there are times when I'm like, that move's too big, and I walk away from it. And I think that's a mistake. I think we can learn from these things, use them as opportunities, and I think Marina really embodies that and exhibits it at every opportunity. So thanks for sitting down with me, Marina. I know this took forever to get out, but it's kind of fun listening back to those conversations from a year ago. And for you guys, if you want to know where to find Marina, if you want to check out her tattoos, if you want to get a tattoo from her, you can find her at marinainoue.com. That's MarinaInoue.com. She's got all her traveling dates on there, so go check her out. And like I mentioned before, performance climbing coach coming to Columbia, Maryland, April 6th to 8th. You can save $100 if you register at performanceclimbingcoach.com before February 22nd. And sign up for our newsletter. You can do that right there in your show notes. You can do it at powercompanyclimbing.com. You can find me on the Instagram. You can find me on the Facebook. You will not, however, ever find me on the Twitter, because we don't tweet. We scream like eagles.
It's time to build.